Welcome to The Writing Life. Today we're going to be talking about the publisher life. And I put up a post on Facebook and on my Facebook group asking people to contribute questions for this. And I'll answer as many of them as I have time for. And the ones I don't get to today, I'll save. As you can see, I'm hanging out in the home office in my official writer garb of t-shirt and pajama pants and glasses because I don't put my contacts in every morning when I get up because I'm not going out of the house. Why should I? So let's kick right off. Rachel asks how to set yourself apart from the slush pile short of stalking. Now, we've all heard, or a lot of us have heard, hell, some of us have told, horror stories of authors going to the Romance Writers of America conference and sliding manuscripts under the stall between writers and agents. Don't do that. Let people pee in peace. Or poop in peace. Whatever. Whatever you're doing, whatever someone's doing in the stall next to you, let them do that. Don't fucking leave them alone. So then there's the case of an author who legitimately stalked an agent and showed up at their house and threatened the agent. Don't do that. How do you set yourself apart from the slush pile? All right. I know I sound like a broken record when I talk about follow the submission guidelines, but follow the fucking submission guidelines. It's really not hard. Here, I'm going to pause for a second while I call up the Falstaff Books website. That's falstaffbooks.com. I'm not real goddamn original. All right, general submissions. General submission guidelines. Send it with a cover letter. The requested sample sized by format is indicated above. In other words, if you're sending a novel-length submission, we say that 60 to 110,000 words usually hits our sweet spot. Please submit the first 3 chapters with query letter for consideration. Please also let us know in your query letter if your work is a standalone novel or part of a larger series. So, send it the right size. If you're submitting multiple places, that's fine. I'm not surprised by that. I don't expect you not to. If somebody else buys it, please let us know immediately. All right. Step 1. Microsoft Word documents only. Prefer a docx format, but I'll take a doc format. The manuscript should be submitted as an attached file, not embedded in the email. 12-point Times New Roman font, 1-inch margins, double spaced. Do not indent manually. All right, let me go over this for you. When you're working in Word, and I don't write in Word, I write in Scrivener, and I don't give a fuck. Learn to work in Word. The industry works in Word. You're gonna have to work in Word for your edits. Learn to fucking work in Word. If you can't, don't say you can't. You fucking can. A Microsoft Office online subscription's $100 a year. Donate fucking plasma twice if that's the financial situation you find yourself in. But work within the tools that everybody expects you to work in. So, submit a fucking Word document. Now, why don't I want hard tabs? And what do I mean when I say hard tabs? You're familiar with this device, right? Sorry, trying to get it out of the glare. You're familiar with this device. These keys on the side, they have words written on them. One of them says tab, and it will boop, push the text in at the beginning of a paragraph. Don't do that. Don't do that. When we start formatting your work for ebooks, A lot of times manual tabs like that, and God fucking forbid you space barred 5 times to get there. A lot of times those hard tabs fuck up the layout, and we have to go back through the manuscript and take out every individual tab or spacebar tab that you've put in. On a 120, 105, 95,000 word manuscript, that's a lot of fucking tabs. It's a giant pain in the ass. Don't be a pain in the ass. Go into the little file bar, click the menu thingy, set up in the document setup bullshit, and say indent first line of paragraph. Then it'll automatically do it for you. Oh my God, it's like somebody fucking knew how to build a piece of software. I hate to give Microsoft credit. I know, I do too, but Word's a good program. Work in it. Learn how to submit in it. Do not use hard tabs. Number your pages. Header, footer. It'll do this shit for you. Chapters should start on a new page. At the end of a chapter, you go into Word, you insert a section break. Rachel, if you want to know how to stand out from the slush pile, follow the goddamn guidelines. And learn how to write a roughly professional query letter. Query letters. 1. Don't address it to a human being unless you have a connection with that human being. It looks like bullshit, and we can smell bullshit a mile away. We're fucking writers, we live with it. 2, don't put it to whom it may concern. Here are some good ways to address a query letter to a publishing company where you don't have a personal connection. If you know me, dear John, I met you at this convention. You said to send you this submission. If that's the first sentence, then I get it straight away and I will actually look at it. It'll probably then still get referred to our slush team and our submissions readers, but you'll at least make it to that point. Dear sir or madam, come on. Dear Falstaff Books, dear editor, dear acquiring editor, any of those are fine. Dear Tor Books, dear DAW, dear editor, just don't try to fake like you know somebody, because that's bullshit. And then a reasonable query letter is really only about 3 paragraphs. Sorry, I'm a little sniffly. First paragraph. Hi, John. I met you at this convention. We talked about my book, title, which is genre, length, and is the beginning of a 3-book series. Here is the submission that we talked about. Paragraph 2. Blah 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 book is about blah 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 blah. 3 to 5 sentences. No longer. If you cannot boil your book down to 3 to 5 sentences for a cover letter, then get the fuck back to the drawing board and learn how to write a query letter. Cut your shit down. You don't have that much time, and I'm not going to read your full, long-ass query letter. I got shit to do. I got videos full of profanity to create. Then the 3rd paragraph is, I am this, I have written this, I have published here, I have this, and I love cats. Again, 3 to 5 sentences. Your entire query letter should really be at most 4 paragraphs and half a page. Keep it short and simple. Thank you, your name. There, solid query letter. Knock that shit out. It's rare enough that we get something that is properly formatted and has a professional looking query letter that when it came in last week, I emailed the author and said, thank you. You're restoring some of my faith in the universe. We get 3 to 5 submissions every day. And it's rare enough that one comes in with a properly constructed query letter and a properly formatted manuscript in genre that it was worth me emailing the author. You want to stand out from the slush pile? Do your shit right. Now, other ways to stand out from the slush pile. Don't start with a dream. We've seen it, we've read it, we've watched it in a million movies, we're fucking tired of it. Don't start your book with a dream. Don't start with your character waking up and going through their morning ablutions and then staring in the mirror to look at themselves so you get a paragraph of description. If you need all of that, then you're not ready to be published. Yes, I recently read a book published by a longtime author who started his shit with a big long paragraph of the main character looking in the mirror. Yes, you can find a dozen examples of published authors starting their books with dreams. You're not a published author. These people have built up equity with the readership and with the publishing industry. They get to do shit that you don't get to do. Hell, I get to do shit that you don't get to do, and I'm barely a mid-list author. When you're new and when you're just starting out, you've got to play by every single rule. The rookie, undrafted free agent for the football team doesn't get to act all baller and get arrested and expect to still have a job, even though the 5-year Pro Bowl veteran just got arrested with him. It's like way back in the WWF, there was a thing called the curtain call where Triple H and Shawn Michaels and Kevin Nash and Scott Hall all got together in the middle of the ring and hugged because Kevin and Scott were going away, and it was a great big hoo-ha. Somebody had to get punished for this. Kevin quit. Scott quit. Shawn Michaels was the world heavyweight champion at the time. That meant that Hunter was getting the shit. And he took a heaping load of shit for a year because he was the new guy and he didn't have any juice. When you're new and you're just now submitting, then you don't have any juice and you have to follow all the rules. And you have to make your book better than everybody else who's already got a contract. Sorry, I know that's gross, but my nose is running. All right, what else can you do to help your book stand out from the slush pile? Know what your book's about. Be able to condense it and write an arresting query letter. There are plenty of resources online. Query Shark is a website that will help you learn to write better query letters. Those are going to be the biggest and easiest things if you're not someone who travels to conventions. Meeting the publisher at a convention is one of the best ways to make yourself stand out from the slush pile. I love the story. When I went to, God, what was that convention? It was Fandom Fest in Louisville, Kentucky. It was the hottest goddamn July on record in Kentucky. It was the weekend after 4th of July, and it was so hot. It was so miserable. And the air conditioning in the hotel shit the bed. Now, this was not a normal hotel. This was what used to be a motel where the doors opened to the outside. And it had rooms around the swimming pool, which was open to the sky. Then they under the dome to that shit. They dropped a terrarium over the motel. So the whole thing was a giant Florida room with no air. And along the hallways, all the air conditioners in all the rooms were through-wall air AC units, so they were blowing hot air out into the hallway. In the 30 feet from my door to the stairwell, I was drenched with sweat. I looked like I had just taken a shower, fully dressed. There were 2 rooms, other than the guest rooms, where the air worked, and that's where they were having panels. The whole reason I wanted to go to this convention was I wanted to meet Deb Dixon from Bellbridge Books. She had published My Friend Kalena. The books looked good. Kalena had great things to say about her and about Bellbridge, and I wanted to see if she would buy the Black Knight Chronicles, reprint the series, and maybe add on to it. So I drove 8 hours, got myself onto programming, got myself badged in to meet one person. So I'm there, and they're doing this thing they call small press spotlights, where they had 3 or 4 small press publishers sitting at a table, and you could ask them questions. Well, I watched one, and there was nobody on that panel that I was specifically looking to pitch to, but I didn't know a whole lot about small presses, so I figured it couldn't hurt, right? So I watched this one, and then about 2/3 the way through the panel, this little Barbie doll looking girl from the front desk comes in and says, "I'm sorry, y'all. This room's putting too much of a load on our air conditioning system, and we're going to have to shut down the air." And boop, flipped the switch on the thermostat and walked out. Now let's talk about air conditioners for a second. I'm not a heating and air specialist. But when there's only 2 rooms in a whole goddamn hotel where the air works, they ain't putting that much of a load on the air conditioning system. All of the shit that's broke, that's where all the load was. But whatever. She left. Started to get hot. Started to get hotter. Panel was over. Room cleared out. I was waiting the 10 minutes between panels because Bellbridge Books was part of the next spotlight panel, and that's who I wanted to hear from. As the room empties out, I look over, and there's a woman and what I presumed to be her husband sitting along a wall. They were a little older than me, maybe 10, 15 years older than me. And me, and that was it. Room was empty otherwise. So I got to thinking. I said, "John, that girl didn't open the case on that thermostat with any kind of key. She didn't push in any kind of code." So I got up and I walked back to the back of the room. Sure enough, that thermostat looked just like the one in my house. I looked at it, looked around. Yep, still nobody here but me and this couple. Boop, flipped the switch on. Oh, look, cool air starts blowing right through the room. Go back, sit down. The woman looks over and said, "Did you just do what I think you just did?" And I said, "If you think I turned the air back on, you're damn right I did." She laughed. She said, "I'm Deb Dixon from Bellbridge Books. I like you." I said, "That's good, because I'm John Hartness and I drove 8 hours to meet your ass." She's currently editing the 7th book in the Black Knight Chronicles series, so I'd say that meeting worked out pretty well. Meet people. Connect with people. Connect with them on a real level. Jessica Nettles has a book that we're going to publish probably in early 2020. We're working on the editorial process right now. She got that book through the gate because she and I met, had a good conversation at a con, and I said, "Yeah, send me what you got. I'll take a look at it." She did. I liked the book. I think that like every first novel, it needs polish, but there's a great book in there. So I'm like, all right, let's do business. We met. We connected on a personal level. That's one reason I go to so many conventions. I'm not going just to sell paperbacks. I'm going to buy writers. People laugh when I say that, but it's true. This pain in the ass convention in Columbia I did last weekend will all be worth it if one writer and I can come to an agreement on a trilogy that she's interested in me picking up. So one of the ways that you can set yourself apart from the slush pile, Rachel, dye your hair bright red and be funny and charming. You got that already. So there you go. You want to set yourself apart from the slush pile? Follow the goddamn guidelines, write a reasonable query, and if you have an opportunity to meet the publisher, meet the publisher. Go to JordanCon in Atlanta. Tor usually has a solid editorial presence at that convention. Where else are you going to get a chance to meet those editors? All right. Melinda. Melinda asks how to deal with imposter syndrome. This is a big one. If you're not familiar with imposter syndrome, good for you. I'm happy for you. Most creative types that I know all about it, all too well. Imposter syndrome is when no matter what success you've had, no matter how long you've been in a field, you think that you've not earned anything, that you're really not any good at what you're doing, and that eventually everyone's going to figure this out and you'll be exposed for the fraud you are. We call that Tuesday in my house. Yeah, everyone lives with imposter syndrome. I know first-time authors who get hamstrung by it and don't submit anything. I know authors with 20 plus years in the publishing industry that frequently have crippling imposter syndrome because they haven't made the New York Times bestseller list. I know people who have made the New York Times bestseller list and they feel like they suffer from imposter syndrome because their last book didn't make the list, or their last book made the list but didn't go as high on the list, or they don't have a degree, or they don't have 3 degrees. I sit on panels with people like AJ Hartley and David Coe, and I feel like an imposter because I'm the redneck without the doctorate. I sat in a signing with Eric Flint, Tim Zahn, Larry Niven, Jerry Purnell, and Brandon Sanderson. I was the only person at the table who hadn't sold well over 1 million books. Yeah, I felt like an imposter. I didn't feel like I belonged there. But Brandon was so kind and so welcoming, and Dr. Purnell was so nice and so engaging. I didn't really talk to the other folks. Brandon and Dr. Purnell were right on either side of me. So I've since spent time a little bit with Eric and with Tim, and they're great guys. I don't really know Larry Niven at all, but he's been pleasant the times I've passed him in hallways. But imposter syndrome is just one of those things that everybody has to deal with. You want to know how I deal with it? Fake it. I put on a funny t-shirt and I dye my hair purple. I know it's faded now. It's just kind of dishwater blonde. But I fake it. If I'm sitting on a panel where I have less experience than everybody else, or less education or credibility in that way, then I try to be funny. If I sit on a panel where I have more experience than a lot of people, then I try to be a little more serious and I try to tailor what I'm bringing to the table to where I fall in the rankings. I did a panel at DragonCon last year on writing fight scenes. I'm on there with people who are black belts, people who are combat veterans, people who have fought and taught people to fight. And I haven't swung a punch at anybody since I was 14 years old. So I was real honest with people. I said, look, everything I know about fighting comes from kung fu movies and pro wrestling. I don't know shit about how to fight, but I know how to tell a story. And that's all we're working on when we're writing a fight scene, is we want to tell the story of a fight. So I focus on my strengths and ignore my weaknesses as much as I can. And then I look at other people who are wildly successful and who I know suffer from imposter syndrome just as bad as I do, or worse. Neil Gaiman has a great story about a time when he was feeling like he didn't belong in the room. Everybody up there was like Nobel Prize winners and shit. And he looks over, and the guy next to him says, "Man, I just feel like I don't belong here. All of you people are so smart and so creative. And what have I done?" And Gaiman thought to himself, well, I guess if Neil Armstrong can suffer from imposter syndrome and get over it, I can too. So I deal with it by pushing through it. That's not an acceptable answer when we're dealing with instances of mental health, but imposter syndrome isn't really necessarily a mental health issue, it's a mindset issue. Kind of like when they tell you to think about your audience naked if you get nervous about speaking in front of a crowd. If you're suffering from imposter syndrome, think about the things that you know more about than the people who you feel inadequate next to. You know, I know far more about pro wrestling than most of the people that I do panels with at conventions. So look, there's something I'm an expert on. So that's how I deal with imposter syndrome. I'm going to do about one more because we're coming up on 25 minutes, and some of these questions that came in were pretty in depth, so they're probably going to get their own video later on. Patrick asks, other than writing skill, what do I look for when I'm signing a new writer? Patrick is someone who is a newish writer. I've published his first book and will be publishing at least 2 more. That's the current contract. What do I look for? When I'm signing an author, especially a new author, I'm not looking at this being somewhere where we're working together for a few months. This is going to be a multi-year process. We're going to be working together for at least a year to 18 months on your first book, and I'm probably signing you to a contract for 3 or 4. When we started Falstaff, the first contracts I sent out were to Emily Leverett and Sarah Adams, 2 friends of mine. And it was for the Iced-Fod Chronicles. The first 2 books are out now, Changeling's Fall and Winter's Air, and you should go buy that shit. You can order them from falstaffbooks.com. That's a 4-book contract. I signed them in 2016, and the dates on that contract stretched till 2020. So I knew that I was going to be working with them relatively closely for a minimum of 5 years. I'm looking for people I can fucking put up with. I'm looking for people who have a sense of humor, who can talk to me, to people. Yeah, I'd love for people to have a social media presence. Sure, that's great. But more, I'm looking for people who are willing to learn, people who are willing to put in the work. I don't necessarily need somebody to come to me with 5,000 Twitter followers or 10,000 people on their newsletter mailing list. But I want people who are willing to invest the time to build their newsletter mailing list, because that is on you as a writer, because that's going to benefit you long term a lot more than it will benefit me overall. Yeah, we have a newsletter. We have a 5,000 person mailing list that we send stuff out to. But we also have 30 to 40 writers that we're sending stuff out about. Your newsletter is your people, and they want to buy your shit. So I want people who are going to cultivate that. I want people who can behave appropriately at a convention. And I'm talking about people who are behaving with my level of appropriate, so the bar's pretty low. You know, you don't have to wear a suit and tie and look like a professional stockbroker or whatever. You just have to show up on time and not be a dick. Or if you're going to be a dick, be amusing. So I'm looking for people that I can put up with. I'm looking for people that are willing to learn. Small presses, we catch authors in two places. Most of the time, we're either catching new authors who are on their way up, or we're providing a home for traditional authors who have a project that doesn't fit, that has been orphaned, or the press has shut down, or they want to write a novella and their publisher isn't publishing novellas, or they've got the rights back to this thing and they want to do something with it, but they don't want to deal with everything else. So we're not building New York Times best-selling titles. I hope that we're building into New York Times best-selling authors, but I'm looking for people who are either teachable or flexible. Most of the people who are experienced authors that I have signed with Falstaff, I know these folks. These are people I know from the convention circuit, and I know that they do good work and that they're not assholes. New writers, a willingness to learn. I want people to want it. I want people to take guidance, and I want people to take criticism. If you think that you're the next best thing, then go fuck yourself. I don't have time for that. I'm not the next best thing. I'm not the last best thing. I'm looking for people who want to do the work. So that's what I look for in signing a new writer. All right, that's about what we've got. We've gone on a little while, and you're probably tired of looking at my big fat ass after that. It is currently middle of November. I've got a couple more conventions this year, so you can expect more episodes of The Long Con. If you enjoyed this video, as always, please like and subscribe to stay notified. You can also support me on Patreon. The link will be in the show notes and down below. And you can also support us, all the folks at Falstaff Books, by going to falstaffbooks.com and buying a book. A lot of those titles do use affiliate links, so after you click a link, whatever you buy on Amazon will get a tiny percentage, even if it's not the same book. So we'll get a very small kickback, and it doesn't cost you anything. So that's it for now. I'll be back in a couple of weeks with a writer-focused episode of Writing Life, and then we'll come back next month for more publisher Q&A. Y'all be good.